In today's video, we're going to be going over the XM1V. So this is a defender under the Agent Ember. It is not so much of a tanky defender, kind of like the M1E1 and the FV, but in the sense it's more of a utility vehicle. So first off, let's go over the abilities on the vehicle. The primary is a demolition charge. This kind of launches 2 charges at an enemy. It does about 400 to 500 damage per charge. If you hit both, it's about 1,000. It has a decently long range. It's pretty effective at hitting people over obstacles as well, so it's a pretty good tool overall. I definitely enjoy using it. And then the second and the more what I would call main ability of this vehicle is the minefield. So the minefield is kind of what this vehicle is all about. You're kind of just placing mines down, making sure that you're kind of stopping the enemy, CCing the enemy, making their life essentially miserable. And it's fantastically implemented in this vehicle. It's expensive, I get it. Sometimes the ability itself is quite expensive. There's a few things that you can do to augment that. But overall, I think it's a perfectly balanced ability. I understand that some people find it a bit frustrating to face, but with the minefield, though, one thing that I should mention is it combos really well with the ultimate. So the ultimate on this vehicle is a large bomb. You kind of just drop. It's a bunker-busting bomb, so it can go through structures and stuff to hit what you're actually trying to aim for. I like to use the minefield to stop someone and have my ultimate prep so I can drop it on their forehead. If you hit an enemy vehicle with the bomb itself, you will instantly kill it, and then it'll have an area around it will do about 1,500 to 1,000 damage, depending on how close they are to the bomb, and it will also throw their vehicle as well. Let's go over equipment that you'll kind of want to run on this vehicle. I personally use the rebuild kit, however the repair kit is fine. This is just to help with a little bit of tankiness, but in all honesty, I haven't found myself wanting to use repair kit on this vehicle just because of how slow it is. And then for the second equipment slot, I personally use recovery protocol. However, I do know some people also use smoke curtain to kind of hide their mines in the smoke. And that's, you know, a great cheeky way to get around people seeing your mines from a distance. And then there's also TEPs. Don't really care for that. So for second slot, you could do recovery protocol. This is what I prefer. Or the phantom curtain. Unfortunately, this vehicle does not have access to the hull reinforcement kit. If it had access to hull reinforcement, I think I would also go the repair kit as well. But since it doesn't, it's one of the main reasons why I actually don't use this set of equipment. And then, okay, let's go over modules, kind of what I use. So this is the demolition charge. It applies, this is the one that I use, the BLU. It applies vulnerable for 10 seconds. But that's not really the main reason why I run it. I actually run this because of the increased blast damage and the minimum blast damage. There's also a couple other ones that I could also recommend running. Just having the reduced energy cost on it is perfectly fine. The demolition charge cooldown is also a neat one to have, just if you want to use it more. I personally don't find myself needing to use it more. The LFS2 does apply a track repair penalty, so this can be useful in comboing it with your ultimate. So it makes it a 10-second track repair penalty for enemy vehicles that get hit by this. It also increases the blast radius by 10%, which definitely helps with that overlapping on the ability itself. But I do just prefer having the extra damage. For the second mod slot, this is kind of where this vehicle is super unique. And it has a bunch of modules on it. I don't think the first 2 modules should be purchased. They're just not worth it, in my opinion. Neither the energy cost reduction or the cooldown reduction. However, the third module slot, the M87, this creates a grease trap instead of doing splash damage. So if you're trying to make a giant area of grease, this is a perfectly usable option for you. It slows down enemy vehicles. It doesn't do damage to them, but it definitely makes their vehicles harder to control. My preferred is to actually use the M87G2. This is the minefield charges that gives you an extra one, but it also allows you to rotate the minefield itself, and it gives you an extra boost on the reduction of the energy cost, which is very useful in this vehicle, especially when you're getting another set of mines for free. The M88, this is a minefield that I believe is pretty good for games where there's fast moving vehicles. I personally don't use it because it's a little bit too situational for me. it does apply fragility to vehicles, but in all honesty, vehicles moving over 20 kilometers an hour through a minefield generally aren't going to be like your defenders and stuff that you need the fragility on. For me personally, it's not my cup of tea. However, the minefield mine explosion radius is a nice touch on top of this mod itself. And then finally is the M92. So this is the proximity mines that essentially have the FV jamming field on each of these mines. These mines can also be rotated as well. One thing to note is that they do take 0.5 seconds to kind of release the jamming effect. So it slows the vehicle and it interferes with the vehicle systems. Essentially, this two-part is the jamming effect. It's really annoying to go against, I won't lie. I personally don't run this just because it's not the form of CC that I'm looking for, since it's much harder to combo the ultimate when running this specific minefield. Now, for the toughness mod, for the first slot, I don't think the first or second one should really be looked at all that much. The third one, also the 5.4% increase on turret armor, is whatever. The fourth one, the AE02, taking internal module grants stacks of warded. I actually kind of like this one, just because it increases your hit points, and even though it increases your engine and fuel tank crit modifier, when you do get a stack of warded, it essentially removes this extra modifier, and it helps prevent, ammo rack damage and stuff like that. I will say, I don't think it's worth it in the sense that it only grants one singular stack of warded, especially when compared to the M2. So the M2 instantly grants 5 stacks of warded and a track repair boost when you get immobilized. It does have a 20-second cooldown, but I think it's enough of a cooldown that it's used pretty frequently. It does increase your frontal turret armor. Again, that doesn't really do too much for you. I think the biggest drawback about this is the turret traverse speed, and I definitely feel the turret traverse speed going down when I'm using this. One recommendation is if you aren't a huge fan of the turret traverse speed reduction, I would go with the AE, just because of the extra hit points and also being able to get warded. For the legendary slot here, its increase in frontal hull armor and frontal turret armor is whatever. The main thing is it grants adamant when you're below 50% HP, which reduces all incoming crit damage by 20%. When you are below 25% hit points and you're out of combat, you will recover HP at 10 per second, so you can technically full heal. My biggest issue with this specific mod slot is all the debuffs are just not worth it. The hit points reduction of 10% means that you have to pair this with a different module that gives you 10% hit points, and you don't get to reap those benefits. And again, this vehicle turns like a ship. It turns really, really slowly. So decreasing that hull traverse speed and also decreasing that turret traverse speed on top of everything, I personally just do not recommend this module at all. But that's just kind of my idea. It's overall, it looks good, but I just don't think the benefits outweigh the negatives. Now, for the second toughness mod, this is kind of where things also kind of take a turn. So, the flat hit points, I can recommend actually getting this early, like super early on. This is generally what I ran for most of the vehicle that I was using it for. Spaced armor HP honestly doesn't matter that much to me. I don't think this mod is worthwhile. The ramming damage resistance from the front, again, it's alright. Doesn't really matter that much to me. And then there's the ramming mastery one, or the AAP V2. The only reason why I take this is the increased hit points. But honestly, because of the fact that it reduces my hull traverse, I actually think the basic one is just slightly better than this one. Because you're not getting that much out of the actual ramming mastery. 9 times out of 10, you're maybe ramming 1 or 2 people per life, so you have to ram 10 people to get full effect of this. I just don't think it's worth it in the long run. The utility mod, there's only one, equipment cooldown. You might as well take it whenever you get the chance to get it. It's a pretty good mod just in general. Now, for the last slot, the firepower mod, there's the AP damage maximum mod. So right, if that's all you want. The AP penetration and AP velocity, I don't recommend either of these, just due to the fact that, I don't recommend this one, just due to the fact that, your penetration's already pretty good, and this doesn't help you at further ranges anyways. The third option, which is the WSAN1, grants retribution for 10 seconds after damaging an enemy vehicle with a shot. This is the one that I take. It reduces the main reload on the gun by 10% and also increases 5% damage. So it's not as much damage increase as the 8% or the first firepower mod slot, but the minus 10% to gun reload times means your reload is 4.5 seconds after shooting someone. I honestly just prefer taking this mod over just the flat damage. And then finally, the last firepower mod slot grants 10 Zelius after immobilizing a vehicle. The problem with this is you have to immobilize an enemy vehicle with a shot. So you have to take an extra shot just to get this. And it's a 25% main gun reload time. So overall it's 30% off, which gives you about 4.2 second reload. The reduction on the damage itself, the 10% reduction, I just don't think it's worth it, especially since this vehicle has a very, very short fall off range of only 92 meters. That means anything further than 100 meters away from you, you're already losing a bunch of damage on it. And then losing an extra 10% damage on top of that, I just can't recommend it at all. Now, let's go over agent skills. So when I'm first starting this vehicle off, I think the first one that you should get when you don't have any skill points or anything, the first one you should prioritize is the 10% to ability energy cost. It should also be your first slot no matter what, just because of how expensive your abilities are kind of on Ember. After that, there's the 10% hold, traverse, and turret speed, or activates overdrive when warded. I think this one's an okay option if you're actually taking a warded mod. However, I feel like the 10% hold and turret traverse speed is kind of just a better option overall for most people. For the third slot, the ramming damage doesn't really matter. The full 5% frontal hull armor doesn't really matter. What I would actually recommend is the +1 ultimate energy for every 250 damage dealt with the main gun. So this means every shot that you do, you're getting essentially, 2% on your ult. And, critical hits, you're getting about 4% on your ult, which definitely boosts on how quickly you get your ultimate back. And then for the last one, either of these are okay options. The 5% frontal hull armor doesn't really break any thresholds. And the 10% ramming damage is kind of what I just used, just because when you ram someone for 500, having that extra 50 HP definitely helps with securing kills and everything like that. For the other ones, the reasons why I don't use it is the minus 25% ability cooldown is cool and all. My biggest issue with this is the fact that you're reducing the amount of damage your abilities do. So for, let's just say, your mortars that you fire out, instead of doing 500 damage on them, you're taking 50 of damage off and you're doing 450. Sure, you're getting less time between each shot, but the problem is you're not reducing the energy it costs, and energy is the most important and critical thing on this vehicle, which is why I just feel like the minus 10% ability energy cost is just a better option. For the activates overdrive when warded, I actually do kind of use this every now and again. My problem is just consistency on actually getting the warded effect. If you are using the one where you're taking internal damage gives you warded, I actually say that this is the better option. But if you're using the one where you're getting warded on tracks, because of how inconsistent you can get it between games, I don't really recommend this one as much. Finally, the maximum impact, the 10% ultimate damage, but minus 2 meters radius to ultimate radius. I don't think it's worth it, in all honesty. You're mostly going to be using this to kind of insta-kill a defender or insta-kill someone that's on your mines, and you're hoping that extra range around it maybe hits or soaks up some damage on some enemy vehicles. But by reducing that 2 meters, you might not even get that 10% ultimate damage, because it's much easier for them to drive out of it now. So that's just kind of my opinion on the agent skills. Now, let's go ahead and get into some gameplay on the vehicle. First, we're going to go ahead and play the vehicle stock. A few things I want to talk about with this vehicle is it is very good in certain game modes. I understand that. So The game modes that this really excels at is Control and Hardpoint. Essentially, these 5v5 game modes where enemies have to kind of drive into you is kind of the best option for the XM1V. Kill Confirmed is not the greatest game mode for this vehicle just because the random spawns and not being able to kind of draw enemies into you. That doesn't mean that the vehicle is bad in Kill Confirmed. Again, it is a 5-second reload for 600 damage. It's a pretty good DPM machine regardless. And it does suck in this game that at the start I'm kind of just bugging out, and I hope that they do resolve this. This is actually the very first time I've ever experienced this specific bug. I think it may have something to do with the account. I'm not 100% sure. But essentially the bug kind of resolves itself, so we won't worry about that. And this is kind of where I was talking about the DPM on the vehicle. It's actually quite exceptional. Like, I'm the one that's driving into this guy. This guy isn't driving into me. I'm not able to, you know, have him drive into my mines. And it's an XM1V anyways. My mines kind of do nothing to him regardless. But as you can see, I can easily kind of pick up the kill just because I outplayed him with the exceptional DPM. And regardless, you can use your mines as a zoning tool, kind of like in this situation. Like, where's he gonna go? Drive forward? It doesn't help him too much. He can reverse, I get that. But again, his reverse isn't the greatest, so not much he could have really done there. But like I said, Kill Confirmed, not the greatest mode for this vehicle. Conquest, also not the greatest mode just because you're kind of wanting to run around in Conquest. That doesn't mean that you can't do well in Conquest on this vehicle, especially if you decide to sit in a heavily contested zone. So on B, on Nordoko, B on Project Phoenix, or C on Project Phoenix is actually kind of where I prefer to sit on Project Phoenix. Stuff like that. It's very good at not moving. Essentially, it's a great CC vehicle. It's a great vehicle to kind of just hold a point and kind of not do anything else. And I understand that about the vehicle, but it does also have, you know, it just because it excels at that one thing doesn't mean it can't do other things. It's decently fast. The traverse on this vehicle, though, God, the traverse is one of the worst aspects about this vehicle. It's kind of easy to kind of get around this vehicle just because of how bad the traverse is. I actually do enjoy how fast the reverse is on the vehicle. I don't know why it's so fast. It's like 22 kilometers an hour. Or, yeah, it's about 22. And maybe about 25 when you're using boost. But it definitely helps you get out of sticky situations. And again, the gun's very punchy. The short reload. It has decent accuracy when you're not moving. Even when you're moving, it's alright. It's definitely, you can definitely tell the vehicle is meant for close range, at the very least. But one thing I like about this vehicle is just the combo setup. So technically, this ALVT and this AMX are both in my mines. He fully drives into my mines, so I'm going to just try and drop this in between them. And the ALVT didn't seem to be paying much attention. Unfortunately for me, the ALVT didn't take full damage. And in that sense, he is pretty healthy still. But it doesn't really matter too much just because he kind of stopped focusing me and I was able to pick up both of those kills. Again, this vehicle excels at controlling a point. So it's kind of what you're looking for in the vehicle. Other aspects of this vehicle I do kind of enjoy is there is a depth to the modules on this vehicle. So some vehicles, you know, they have modules that augment everything ever so slightly, but this vehicle has a lot of module changes on the mines, so you can change your playstyle a lot with the mines that you decide to go. There's different there's a few good choices, I should say, in the modules. So not every single module slot is just cut and dry. There's a lot of module slots on this vehicle that you have options for, which I do enjoy. It makes this vehicle feel really fleshed out in that aspect. The armor on this vehicle, I understand, not the greatest. It has the very obvious weak point on the vehicle, but I don't think that messes with me too much. I still feel like the armor does well enough for what it is, right? This isn't an in-your-face defender like the M1E1 or the FV. It's more of a sit back and I'm going to control this area kind of defender. And it's going to control it through CC and just area denial through the mines. And I think that's a perfectly valid playstyle. My question for the agent itself is kind of what they're going to do in the future for secondary agent. I hope it's something that also fits that play style of just setting things up and meticulously waiting for people to kind of drive into your traps. Again, and because of the 5-second reload, I'm actually not too worried about destroying like recons, the recon probes for the HSTVL. The elevation on this gun also means that you can sometimes destroy spy planes. It's not super consistent, but it's a decent elevation. It's better than like the T-62 or even the Object 287. Those vehicles have horrible gun elevation. And this is kind of just a prime example of the enemy is having an extremely hard time pushing into us. And part of that is just due to the fact that I'm just sitting there making it extremely hard for them to do so. And especially with the fact that my ulta is about to come up, means that I have a very easy way to combo people, especially like I'm specifically waiting for like the XM1V to kind of drive in and get stunned by one of my teammates so that I can instantly kill their only defender, which makes it much harder for them to play. Luckily for me, that AMX drove onto my own mines, so he killed himself for me. This HSTVL does kind of rush on point, and I'm just trying to drop my charges on him. Luckily, he drives back out into the open, so I'm able to just pick off the kill, and he kind of messes up his ultimate, so I'm not too worried. As you can see here, when I peek around those corners as well, I kind of wiggle the vehicle, and that's just because the whole armor can be a little trolly to enemies trying to hit a specific point if you wiggle. You don't want it to be too exaggerated. In this instance, I finally get flanked, and that is, again, where this vehicle suffers, is when you do get flanked. But that's why you're supposed to augment the flanks by using your mines to prevent enemies from going there. In my case, I failed to do so, as I didn't realize that they were going to actually come around. But regardless, our team was able to hold him off the point, and we were able to pick it up. It was a very good game in the XM1V. I feel like this was one of the games where it exceptionally shined, even when it was stock. So that game, the vehicle was completely stock, and it still did extremely well, and it's one of the reasons why I think the XM1V is just easily an S-tier vehicle for me, because it just does so well, even in environments where you wouldn't expect it to do well. I will say, one of the things, yeah, I understand Kill Confirmed isn't the greatest mode for this vehicle, but it's still a good all-around base platform. And I think that's the important thing about this vehicle, is even if you can't rely on your abilities to do damage, you still have an overall good platform of a vehicle. You have a good gun, you have decent mobility, you know, you have decent armor. It's just a good all-rounder for a defender, in my honesty. One thing that I will say that I feel is lacking in this vehicle is I do wish it had a bit more HP, which is kind of why I augment it with as many HP mods as I can. I generally wouldn't recommend doing it the way that I have it currently set up in this game, just because the 10% hull traverse nerf, or 10% hull traverse reduction, is kind of tough to power through, especially once you get above like 40 kilometers an hour. When you're above like 40 to 45 kilometers an hour, you really feel a dip in your hull traverse. It feels like you're driving a ship and you're just unable to get that ship to turn exactly where you want it. So one tip that I can recommend when you are driving at those faster speeds is to actually use your handbrake, as the handbrake does allow you to turn much easier at higher speeds. I don't really recommend using your handbrake at lower speeds, just due to the fact that you just bleed so much speed when using it, and at lower speeds you might just come to a stop if you decide to use it that way. But at high speeds, there is an actual reason to use the handbrake on this vehicle to get that just a little bit more hull traverse. Also, that's a cheeky little shot that I did right there. Do you know you can actually shoot through these containers? The sides of these containers, there's some gaps in it, which actually is very cool for some high-level plays and map knowledge, is to kind of just look around and see if you can find those specific spots to kind of throw your opponent off, just like the M1E1 did earlier in this game. Unfortunately, I do get picked off, but that's fine. We're just right back into it. So here is an example of where I'm going to try and set up for my ult. I noticed my ult kind of coming off cooldown. So I'm just trying to get this area set up so that once my ultimate is ready, I can set a trap for someone. I don't know if I specifically pull it off in this situation just because this ultimate does hurt. I think I barely survived. Yeah, I do. So I noticed this M1E1 pushing up. He's been immobilized, and he just got re-immobilized, so I tried to drop it on him. Unfortunately, if I had waited just a second more, I would have realized that he was free, and I would have actually saved my ult. And one thing I should mention with this vehicle as well is it's one of the very few vehicles, if you cancel your own ultimate ability, you will get your charge back. So yes, I understand sometimes you press your ult and you're hoping to kind of get a combo off, but my recommendation, if you realize you can't get a combo off, is to actually just cancel your ult. You can just pull it back in and still have your full ult charge. So just a thing to kind of think about with this vehicle. But regardless, I do enjoy the vehicle overall. I think it's a fun vehicle. Its playstyle is, I think, different enough from the M1E1 and the FB that it warrants kind of picking it up. I notice the ability points going off, which means someone's hit my mines, right? And because of that, I know that they're kind of just in the general area that's pushing up, so I can actually come back and focus them. And as you can see, because I have so many mines up here, it's almost impossible for them to push through. And because I'm using the rotation mines, I have 3 full charges, which means I can just kind of lay mines infinitely on this up ramp. And one thing that, you know, is beneficial for this vehicle is just that extra set of mines for me at least. And you'll kind of see here, like, these mines are able to pick off this guy because of the fact that I have that extra set. If I wasn't running the 3 set, I wouldn't have been able to get that kill at all. I would have still been waiting to actually recharge my mines before I could have dropped them. And again, vehicle overall solid. This was also another well-performing match. I also have to credit the vehicle a lot here. I'm expecting this guy to actually try and push me, so I kind of just wait here. I thought these demo charges were closer, but they weren't. And because I noticed the M3 shooting me in the side, I just decided to push him, and luckily for me, the T62 wasn't paying any attention to me. It seems like he thought my demo charges was someone else trying to shoot at him, so he kind of just looked away and didn't really pay much more mind to me. We're on the last point of this game, and my whole spiel here is just to try and defend this point to the best I can. So I'm going to drop my mines. I probably actually should have held my mines to make sure that this M1 didn't use the APS, because the APS will block your mines on this vehicle. It's something you got to look out for. So here's an example of you being able to cancel your ultimate and keep the charge. I was hoping that the enemy team was actually going to pull in closer, but they never actually did. So I'm going to further set up the area in front to make it so that whenever someone pushes in, I'll be able to kind of instantly kill them and prevent the enemy team from being able to get onto the point at all. Just because if I can stop the enemy in their tracks right here, we kind of just win the game. And I noticed this M1 coming around. I know there's a high likelihood of this M3 killing me, and actually the M1 drops his ult on me. I'm just going to wait for him to get immobilized again, drop my ult, and I actually think this helps win the game right here. So I'm able to kill the M1 right there. You can kind of see his body, and that means that they aren't able to contest the point, and because they aren't able to contest the point, we kind of just are able to clean sweep it right here. But otherwise, thank you again for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you were able to learn something from this video. And if you did like the video, I hope you leave a like and a subscribe so you can see future content on my channel. Have a good one. Goodbye.